And that was the State Collation Center in Bayelsa State, where a fight broke out between the party agents of two political parties. We'll be sure to connect subsequently and bring you more updates on that. But just to give a brief update so far of the contentions, raised in the House. But before I go to that, just to introduce, I have joining me on set the head of current affairs, News Center's Uzonna, joining me on the set. Glad to have you join me.
Thank you so much for having
Just quickly, what do you make of the rancor that transpired, at the State Collation Center in Bayelsa State, like we're viewing just now?
Well, this is not strange. Yesterday morning, we saw something similar, maybe more shameful than this in Imo State, where a party agent was beaten up and dragged on the floor out of the hall. It didn't get to that point in this, but it's typical of Nigerian politicians, where desperation and unlawfulness or unruliness rules. So it's typical of what we see here. I wonder what the real issue is, apart from that I must win by hook or by crook. And so we will continue to play out this drama from time to time. I mean, it's even minimal here. If you recall, in several situations and instances, they will get to the point of using arms against one another. And that is the kind of politics we have seen being played in Nigeria. Unfortunately, the real stakeholders or the real persons in the middle of the game will be sitting out somewhere and not being directly involved, while others are, beating up themselves somewhere.
Let me get your thoughts to one of the highlights in terms of concerns raised by party agents, right there in Bayelsa State at the State Collation Center. One of the party agents mentioned that the result read, does not tally with what they saw at the polling units. What are your impressions on this?
That's one of the problems that Beavers and IREV would have solved, but the politicians themselves do not want it, aided by some misinterpretations or interpretations of the judiciary. Because if IREV and Beavers were brought into play properly to do what it ought to be, to do what it ought to do, there would be no case of figures not tallying, because as you're being accredited, it is counting, you vote, it counts, and then at the end of the day, all you need to do is to hand over the system you used to the people that are at the back end to cross-check. And in fact, I can sit in the comfort of my room and my home and be monitoring the results as they drop. I remember covering the last Anambra State Governorship Election. I was not out there, I was where we prepared something like a studio for us. And right there, I was monitoring the results as they drop across all the local government areas, across all the polling units, because they allowed the system to work. Now, they frustrated it so that it will give them room to manipulate the process, and they are the ones that will come back to continue to complain. You see, let Nigerians wake up to these things. Politicians are the creators of the problem, and they are the ones that will make noise over the problem without providing or preferring any reasonable solution. Numbers may not tally because they didn't want it to tally. However, we just have to move on. And it behoves on INEC to know what is right and do it without minding who is concerned at this time. Apart from Bayelsa, two other states have concluded their elections, announced their results over 12 hours ago. I mean, the last one happened yesterday night around 10 p.m. And up to this moment, the election in Bayelsa, with 8 local government areas in Bayelsa State, they've not been able to tidy it up. Imo State has 27 local government areas. Kogi State has 21 local government areas. Bayelsa has 8. And the one that has the least could not, tidy up the results and bring out and declare who won the election. That is exactly what the politicians want, and that's what they're playing around.
Well, another contention raised by another party agent at the, on the floor of the State Collation Center right there in Bayelsa State, like we observed, was that there was a case of vote hijacking, and results collated were without their knowledge. What do you make of this?
I wonder why they will keep talking about. You see, I don't want to get, begin to sound like I am attacking politicians generally. Frankly speaking, there are decent, very decent politicians in Nigeria. But those few ones that are playing it the wrong way are the ones that are bringing the bad name to the entire field of politics. Politics is an honorable field that people should be involved to make life better for everyone. Unfortunately, we have these individuals who are, playing the game in a very foul way. All of those allegations are usual. I cannot say this enough. It is typical of what they do. Most times you hear people shout about rigging. It is simply because they were rigged out. They rigged, but the other guy rigged better or rigged more. And so everybody lost. Some people lost, and then they'll begin to scream and shout. They should allow this process to go on. Politicians should allow the process to go on and be completed. There should be a process. There should be how things are done. Yes, if you ask me, everyone knows that they cannot succeed without the connivance, active connivance of some guys inside INEC or some people that were appointed by INEC to act on their behalf during elections. They may not be INEC staff, but they will be acting on behalf of INEC during elections. So these things cannot work without their active connivance. And so it's time for us to really identify these things and call it out the way it is, call it out the way it should be. From the National Assembly, where these laws are made, where the laws are amended to suit what it's meant to suit for them and for those people concerned, without necessarily looking at what will make Nigerian electoral process better. Why should we still be talking about manual collation of results? We all monitored the election in Kenya. In Kenya, some years ago, few years ago, we monitored it. And you could sit in Nigeria and observe as everything was progressing. They completed the entire process. The litigation ended before William Ruto was sworn in, who won the election. Why should we continue to talk about manual collation of results will give room for all those manipulations? We continue to do this because those guys who make laws in Nigeria are favored by the crooked means.
Uzonna, I'm afraid I'll have to, have you hold your thoughts.
I think we have to even hold it before I commit myself more.
Let's make a quick dash to Bayelsa State, where we have our correspondent, Bernard Akede. Bernard, good afternoon. Yes, if you could just intimate us on what transpired there, at the floor of the State Collation Center in Bayelsa State.
So, the preview of the boxing that match, unfortunately, now the collation of results has to be convened. As you know already, two governments yet to be announced. One was Silver the Door and the other one is Brass. And what that is announced is Brass. Immediately after the result was announced, of course, the various party agents were not satisfied with what they had. They began to raise their grievances and give several complaints, to which the director was making responses to. For some, they didn't like the responses that they were getting.
Okay, we'll try to reconnect with Bernard, our correspondent, who is live right there in Bayelsa State. But let's speak more with Uzonna, who is right here with me in the studio regarding, the build-up and what transpired in the floor of the State House Collation Center in Bayelsa State. So you can please resume your thoughts.
I thought actually you said we rested there because I was beginning to sound, as if I am attacking I'm not attacking anyone, but I'm just stating the facts the way it is, that we will continue to go round in circles. I was here in 1999 when elections were conducted. I saw elections in 2003. I saw it in 2007. I saw it in 2011. 2015, 2019, and 2023, how many years after, we are still singing the same song, the same old song, manual collation of results. Who does that in a country that says it's the giant of Africa? In a country that wants to move and rule the world? How can we continue to be talking about the same thing several years after? After several millions of naira have been spent in reforms, in electoral reforms and all of that. Remember, a certain president was elected in Nigeria in 2007, Omar Musa Yar'Adua, on the day of his inauguration on 29th of May, right there at Eagle Square in Abuja. He admitted that the election that brought him in was flawed for the first time in human history. A president told the whole world that the election that brought him into power was flawed. He didn't end it there. He began to take clear steps to address that, and by setting up the Ways Committee. Have we forgotten so soon? The Ways Committee sat for years putting together a document that would turn around the electoral system, electoral process in Nigeria. Part of the recommendations was unbundling of INEC, because INEC is overburdened, from regulating political parties to conducting election itself to carrying out litigations, and everything is heaped up on INEC.
Right.
Okay,
just
go ahead.
to chip in there, we understand we have Bernard Akede back live with us from Bayelsa State. Bernard, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Adebola. You can hear me.
Oh, I can fairly hear you, but let's speak on. Just bring us up to speed as to what transpired right there on the floor of the State Collation Center in Bayelsa State.
All right. I was earlier mentioning that the two local governments, I beg your pardon, that were yet to be read was Southern Nigeria and Brass local government. Now, Brass was the one that was being read, was concluded, and certain party agents raised their hands to give their grievances as to what they felt were challenges during the election. Now, while that was ongoing, the red here was responding to some of those issues when one of the party agents stood up and gave vehement complaints that there were certain things that obviously went wrong with the voting process while he was there. And then he claimed that certain persons were harassed, that there was security breach, that there were threats given to certain party agents. And now in response to that, other agents rose up and told him and tried to sort him up, explaining that some of the things he was making, some of the things he was saying were false claims. And in the process of the back and forth, this party agent really thought that hit the agent of the Representatives Congress, the APC, and that's when all hell was let loose and security operatives had to burst into the hall to try and douse the claims, so to speak. But prior to that, it was already announced that there will be 1 hour recess because the documents from Southern Nigeria have still not been completely collated yet. So that's what we were waiting for. And it was in the midst of all that confusion that you saw, when you saw what you saw on TV, basically. The two gentlemen were ushered out of the hall, and the security operatives have tried, to douse the claims and to ensure that everything is back to normal. But again, as I mentioned, we are on 1 hour basis, hoping that within the hour, Southern Nigeria will be ready and will be brought into the hall.
All right, Bernard, just fill us in as to what the mood of the people waiting to hear this result is like right now in view of what transpired, the rancor that broke out right there at the Collation Center.
Able to hear you.
Okay, I was asking how the atmosphere, how the mood of the people are right there in view of what transpired, the rancor that broke out on the floor. What's the pulse of the people like as they wait in anticipation of results being announced?
Well, of course, the atmosphere is so thick, you could almost cut it to the night because everyone's pretty much tense. Nobody wants anything that would trigger any type of rancor, like I just mentioned. Election collation is always a volatile period and a volatile time. So nobody wants anything that could spark up further flames. Outside of INEC office, I sent some clips earlier to show that there's a group of people, the supporters of the ruling party, already celebrating, and nobody wants anything that could cause security.
All right, we'll try to reconnect once more with Bernard Akede right there in Bayelsa State. But then I still have with me Uzonna, the head of News Centre's, news desk. Uzonna, you talked about the use of technology and beavers in cases like these, just to nip in the bud all of these contentious and discrepancies in our electoral process. But then one critical element mentioned by one party agent right there on the floor was that beavers were bypassed. The party agent talked about in a certain polling units, beavers were not used to accredit, and then they also still went ahead and declared overvoting in that region. How do you react to this, or how can these be curbed and nipped in the bud?
It's It's a simple way of taking advantage of the system because they believe that if they bypass the beavers, they will still get to where they are going to. After all, the courts had said that beavers is for mere calculation of numbers and doesn't have any direct impact on the result of the election, because at the end of the day, the result of the election will still be declared or collated manually and be declared same way. But if we get to a point where the entire electoral system is made to be electronic, then everybody would understand that you cannot bypass any stage of the election and still get the result you intend to get at the end of the day. Because this is a simple system, in as much as we know that if we get fully electronic, fresh challenges will emerge because some people will still find other ways of circumventing that same system and to take advantage of it and still mess up the process because that's what they thrive on. But the more they do this, the more the entire Nigerian system should be determined to move forward. We can copy from other countries. Yes, they may be smaller or even bigger countries that have done it and done it well. We can copy from them and find out how did you get to this point? How did you protect your back end? I mean, the back end of your technology and all of that nobody could tamper with them. We can get to this. We can do this only if we are determined. But unfortunately, we have been tied to the system or the syndrome of one step forward, two step backwards. And that's why we are still talking about circumventing or bypassing beavers to, you remember when this whole thing started, when INEC introduced the first process of using electronic to verify people, and they created an option of if you cannot do this, then you use the form. They jumped for it. And then we went through that process and it was jettisoned. And now they're still making efforts to circumvent what the system that has been provided by the electoral umpire. We should sit up and agree that we cannot continue to go this way and make any meaningful progress. Do you know what? How election is conducted, the process of conducting an election is even more important than the outcome of that election. Because if the process is not tidy, if the process is not clear and clean, you have already created room for the wrong persons to emerge as leaders. But when the process is tidied up, including how candidates emerge from political parties, because that is where that is the root of the corruption, how candidates emerge from political parties. If we get all of this straightened and cleaned out, that is the only time we will be assured reasonably that we always have credible leaders who have the conscience or who have the mind of the people. If not that, we'll continue to go around in circle, and every 4 years, we come back to the same spot of crying and weeping.
Okay, let me just come to one other critical issue in terms of hijacking of results. Uzonna, what do you think should be the disposition of security operatives going forward in the conduct of elections?
There's a limitation to what the security men can do during election. They come to the polling unit unarmed. That is the law. And they cannot get too close. They have to stand in a distance. And when they are not armed, they are as weak and fragile as anyone else. So there's little they can do. So we need to take a closer look at all of this. And hijacking of ballot papers is still thriving because a lot is still being done manually. I will never say this enough. A lot is still being done manually. And so you can hijack ballot paper. If you don't, if the things are not done manually, which ballot paper will you hijack? You can't hijack anything. There's nothing to hijack. And if you snatch the electronic device, each person's details are already there, and you cannot manipulate it. You cannot become me because you want to win an election. You cannot become another person the data of everybody is there. So there'll be a limit to what anybody can do. But still, because we still do stuff manually, yeah, the truth is that the cases of, or the frequency of ballot box snatching has reduced tremendously. Think about 2003 and 2007. Some people will sit in a hotel, stuff a ballot box, and when it's time, they just come, exchange it, shoot fire in the air. People will scamper for safety. They will just drop the one they have done in the hotel and take away the original one. And that's it. But that's, I mean, that has reduced tremendously, but we need to eliminate it completely by going full electronic in election.
Okay. Now, in the build-up of these elections from Kogi, Imo, Bayelsa State, which is still being collected, we have seen different allegations of, INEC officials allegedly to have connived with one of the political parties in assisting them in getting higher scores. There was allegation of a youth corps member, with a sum of ₦1 million. I'm wondering, in terms of the orientation of these INEC staff members or ad hoc staff members, how do you think they can be, reorientated in ensuring they protect the sanctity of our electoral process?
There's a soundbite I hear on radio. I can't remember the radio station now. They said, that soundbite says that university lecturers always go on strike, despite the fact that they teach in multiple universities. As far as they are concerned, this is their own Aso Rock. The university is their own Aso Rock. While the politicians are doing theirs up there, they will be doing their own here. That same mentality runs through everyone, most people, including the corps member, who, when he's appointed to serve as an ad hoc staff during an election, he sees it as an opportunity to make the kind of money he has not made before. He does not see it as service to humanity or service to the country. He sees it as simply an opportunity to make money. And so when that temptation comes, the resistance is not even there at all, because he will jump for it, he will go for it, full time. Because this was the intention, this was the motive of coming in the first place. And it's a societal tragedy. It's a societal tragedy because it plays out everywhere, across the length and breadth of the system. Our field, the journalism, the media practice is not exempted anyway. Because we are struggling with ourselves to maintain that level of, that standard that that was handed over to us. And so what do I say about the corps member who earns, I don't even know what they are being paid now, is it 30,000 naira or so? And perhaps where he's serving, he's being paid some 10,000 naira in many places, some are not even paid at all. And he sees an opportunity of making 500,000 naira, and he believes this is my own turn because all the people there, we are voting for them to go and chop. That's a syndrome, that's the thought, that's the mentality. And so it's a big problem. Will you be able to import some people from outside the universe to come and work in Nigeria? No, you can't. So a lot still lie in our hands, but we need to take clear, measurable, sustainable steps to cleaning out the system. Someone talked about the role of the National Orientation Agency. I feel so bad because I remember several years ago when a certain Professor Eluchukwu Amuchazi was in charge of the National Orientation Agency, and how they were creating content on radio, on TV to sensitize the people, to affect, to tweak the mind of the people that was going haywire. But these days, we don't see anything like that. We are on autopilot, and it seems nobody really cares what the mind is saying. All everybody cares is Naira and Kobo, unfortunately.
Well, just to quickly highlight results read out so far for Bayelsa in terms of the local government. Yes, they have adjourned to reconvene, but the update given so far so good regarding Brass local government area was that APC had vote of 18,431, Labour Party 83 vote, and PDP 12,602 vote. That's for Brass local government area. They will reconvene shortly. They took a break to adjourn, to resume collation of results in Bayelsa State. Let me digress just for a moment to what transpired in Kogi State. We'll stay on Bayelsa State. Now, in Kogi, they've declared a winner, for the election conducted. But then polls would resume fresh elections again come Saturday, where 59 polling units will be contesting fresh elections. I'm just wondering, 59 polling stations, conducting elections, a winner declared. Do you think that all goes well, having declared a winner and then, contesting elections again in 59 polling units? What are your thoughts on this, Uzonna?
In the next few days, we will be sure of what is going to happen, whether INEC will go ahead with that election or not, because as it is right now, it is just mere formality. It will not change anything. The results have been declared. And remember that even the last memo sent out by INEC announcing the date of the election, there was a condition that all of the plan they have is still dependent on the final declaration of the state returning officer in Kogi State, and whether the margin of lead will be narrow enough to warrant fresh election. But as it played out, the margin of lead between the APC candidate and the SDP candidate that came second was wider than whatever the total, about 200 and something thousand registered voters in the polling units where election was suspended. So even if INEC goes ahead to conduct that election, and all the people there come out and vote 100% for the person that came second, his result, his votes will not be more than the one that was declared winner. So it won't change anything. So that's the situation right there. INEC may decide not to go ahead with that election because it will just be wasted effort.
Well, we've seen time and time again, INEC officials defaulting. And I have listened to the REC talk about penalties for defaulting members of INEC, ad hoc staff members. But then, do you think impunitive measures are strong enough in deterring INEC staff in comporting themselves properly in the conduct of our elections?
Some people have said so much about the Election Offences Tribunal, like a tribunal to try election offenses squarely. And if we don't get to a point where we see, justice not just being said to be done, but seen to have been done. If we don't get to that point, INEC will be wasting its time talking about this thing. Just like the video that came online on Saturday, where some result sheets were seen already to have been filled even before the first ballot was cast in that election. The results were already prepared. Someone prepared those documents. It is not just it may not be those people that were arrested with it that prepared it. There could be insiders who know that this set of ballot papers and results and materials are going to a certain polling unit or polling area. So they have already worked in connivance with whoever they are serving his or her interest to do this. So until INEC brings out people like that, expose them, and get them punished openly, publicly, to the knowledge of everyone, we may not ever see an end to this thing. So INEC talking about people that violate their rules, they will keep talking about it. Unfortunately, they will until they get tired. If not, they should wake up and begin to take realistic steps, verifiable, open steps of punishing offenders, and that's the only way it will be stopped.
We've seen in the course of this election, one political contender being kidnapped, and then the other political party coming out to say this particular person has stepped down, so you go and vote for this party. There seems to be so much craze and thirst and hunger for political position. How do you think we can depopularize elective offices to ensure we get the right people in the right places?
I'm not the one that said that one of the most thriving industry in Nigeria today is politics. Once you get elected into political office, you have made it. So until that time, one of the things, one of the things that will be done is to, I have a few friends in the National Assembly, I hope they won't see this as personal attack, is to make our National Assembly part-time. Make it part-time, make it less attractive. Make it less attractive, and then a situation where the president is the almighty, drain all those benefits, reduce it drastically. You cannot imagine that the country is struggling at a time like this, and the people that were elected by those struggling people are just concerned of how to buy cars worth billions of naira. Until we drain all of those things, it will still continue. That desperation will continue. If we get to a point where, assuming we get to a point where the senator is not earning more than the professor in UNILAG or the senior lecturer in UNILAG, the senator, an average senator, is at the same level with a senior lecturer in UNILAG, who will rush to it? Everybody will mind their business. People will look for other things to do. Where the National Assembly members are paid based on sitting, and when they convene, it's part-time. You don't have to relocate to Abuja. You convene in Abuja when you have need to. Things will change, but who will make that law? The same people there. So it's a hopeless dream. I'm just Uzonna, wake up, please.
I must sincerely thank you so much for your time, Uzonna Ononye, Head of News and News Central Television. Thank you so much for your expertise. When I return back to our regular programming, of course, we'll reconnect for the State Collation Center in Bayelsa State when they reconvene.